Right, by my clock, we're right at 2 p.m., so we will go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the 2026 Local Wellness Policy Triennial Assessment Training. My name is Lauren Christensen, and I serve as the Child Nutrition and Wellness Specialist for the Nebraska Department of Education. And I'm in the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services and Nutrition Services. And today I'm joined by our moderators, Kathleen Kim, as well as Laurel Wheeler, and they both gave a little wave there. They will be assisting me to capture any questions that are received in the chat box, as well as helping with the Q&A portion at the end of this training session. Kathleen serves as the NDE Healthy Schools Program Specialist, which is also in the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services. And Laurel is a contractor for us for our fiscal year 23 Team Nutrition Grant Project. All right. So before we dive into the main content, just a couple of housekeeping items to go over. First of all, the materials for this session are provided at the link on the slide. These were also sent to registrants early this morning. So if you happen to register after that was sent out, I apologize, but there was an email that was sent out with a direct link. Otherwise, you can access this information on our local school wellness policy webpage on the NDE webpage. And then I would just also ask that you please make sure to keep your microphone muted to help minimize background noises and avoid distractions. You're certainly welcome to keep your camera on or to keep it off, whatever you prefer. And if you have any questions during the presentation, we would ask that you please enter those into the chat box. We will address all questions at the end of the session during a Q&A session. And if we're unable to get through all the questions, depending on the number received within the remaining time frame, we will be developing a frequently asked question document that addresses any questions received, and we will share that out at a later date. Please note that this webinar is being recorded so that you can revisit it later, or share it with any colleagues that maybe were not able to attend today. A direct link for this recording will be sent to the same listserv that we used for the training notification, and you can certainly share it with others that maybe didn't receive that communication. And then finally, closed captioning is available for today's training for anyone that may need it. So you can just simply click the CC button in the Zoom toolbar to enable this function. Next, I want to take a quick moment to help familiarize everyone with a couple of key terms that we will frequently be utilizing throughout this training session. So LWP, sometimes it's seen as LWSP, but in this instance, LWP stands for Local Wellness Policy. SFA refers to the School Food Authority, and LEA means Local Education Agency. In this space, because it has caused a little bit of confusion, we often use LEA and SFA interchangeably because, again, all SFAs are responsible for completing the triennial assessment, but USDA uses the verbiage LEA, so we wanted to kind of clarify that. RCCI means Residential Child Care Institution. NDE, I'm sure you're all familiar with, stands for the Nebraska Department of Education. And finally, NSLP refers to the National School Lunch Program. Hopefully these acronyms will help streamline our discussion today and ensure clarity as we move forward. With these details covered, let's go ahead and get started with today's agenda. Upon completion of this training, it's our hope that you will be well equipped to share the triennial assessment requirements with your wellness team or building level committees, and develop a plan to work collaboratively towards completion of the triennial assessment. We also hope that you will have an understanding of how to evaluate the local wellness policy to make sure that it contains all required language, understand all components of the 2026 Triennial Assessment, including how to complete the required documentation. And lastly, we hope that you leave feeling like you have tools and additional resources to not only complete the Triennial Assessment, but also to help support your wellness efforts at your school, district, or RCCI. So as I mentioned, both Kathleen and I are housed in the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services at NDE. And this office is focused on supporting the non-academic needs of both students and staff. And our office includes nutrition services, school safety, physical activity, mental health, health services, family engagement, community involvement, employee wellness, and then the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, all of which intersect with school wellness efforts in various ways. You will also notice that many of these areas that our office supports also align with the whole school, whole community, whole child model, often referred to as the WISC model. The primary tenets of the WISC model are outlined on this slide. However, due to our robust training schedule and to ensure that we allow adequate time for questions, I'll go ahead and let you peruse this information on your own. But once again, just wanted to point out the obvious connection to wellness efforts. Okay, now for a little bit of background in terms of the wellness policy timeline, and just to kind of define the requirements of the local wellness policy. So a local wellness policy is a written document that guides a local education agency or school or district's efforts to establish a school environment that promotes student health, well-being, and their ability to learn. This timeline displays the changes of the wellness policy requirements from 2004 to 2016. One of the key points occurred in July 2016 when the USDA issued its final rule. This rule established minimum content requirements for the local wellness policies, ensured partner participation in the development and updates of such policies, and also outlined requirements for periodically assessing and disclosing compliance with the local wellness policy to the public, or in other words, the triennial assessment. That brings us to the first triennial assessment, which was due in June 2023. The 3-year or triennial cycle is based off that original deadline, meaning that all SFAs must complete their second triennial assessment by June 30th, 2026, even if the first assessment was completed or submitted after 2023. This helps ensure that all school food authorities are following a consistent timeline for these assessments. The local wellness policy creates a foundation to support schools in providing healthy meals and beverages, physical activity opportunities, and education to promote lifelong healthy behaviors. We know that healthy behaviors are linked to better student academic performance, concentration, and improved test scores. But I also know that educators and school staff are really invested in helping ensure the overall health and well-being of those that they serve. Policy mandates from the federal level have helped support schools in their role to improve the health of youth, as well as help decrease childhood obesity. With that in mind, let's take a look at the 10 required components of the local wellness policy according to USDA. Each wellness policy must have at least 3 goals, one for nutrition education and promotion, one for physical activity, and one for other school-based activities that promote student or staff wellness. For example, that goal could be centered around mental health efforts. SFAs can opt to have additional goal areas, but only these 3 are required. A local wellness policy must also outline nutrition standards for all foods and beverages sold on the school campus during the school day, meaning that there is assurance that compliance with USDA nutrition standards is in place, SFAs are providing free drinking water during meals, and they're ensuring compliance with smart snack standards for foods and beverages that are sold a la carte, in vending machines, or in school stores. Additionally, policies must also describe the standards for foods and beverages provided, but not sold to students during the school day. For example, this might be a classroom party or a school celebration that involves providing students with a snack. In addition, policies for food and beverage marketing also need to be outlined in the wellness policy. In other words, how can the school environment support healthy eating overall? Only foods and beverages that meet the smart snack standards can be marketed or advertised on the school campus during the school day. The policy must also describe how the public, for example, parents, students, and community members, are invited to participate in the development, implementation, and review of the local wellness policy. We know that their feedback and involvement can really help drive meaningful improvement. Additionally, an individual who has authority and responsibility to ensure that the school, district, or RCCI complies with the wellness policy should be identified within the policy. Generally, this is a position such as the superintendent or principal, rather than the name of a specific person. The policy must also outline how the public will be informed or updated about the local wellness policy on an annual basis. And finally, language about how the wellness policy will be assessed every 3 years, triennial assessment, must also be included within the policy language. Policies can certainly contain additional language beyond the 10 requirements that I just highlighted. In some cases, SFAs have elected to highlight other wellness efforts, but at a minimum, the policy should include language for the 10 areas that I just described. Keep in mind that actual practices should match or align with the written policy language. It's important to note that building a strong wellness committee can also help drive wellness efforts and ensure that policies are put into practice. Therefore, the next few slides, I want to kind of focus on the development of wellness committees. I know this has been kind of a tough area for some of the schools that I have talked to or districts that I've talked to, just getting some of that recruitment effort. So hopefully these resources and discussion will help provide a starting point. A strong wellness committee is important because obviously it brings together a diverse group of individuals and they carry various perspectives, but in general, they all have a common mission, and that's to help improve student well-being. Secondly, we know that a well-structured team helps maintain accountability and can help ensure consistent progress. This team is not just about oversight, it's truly about actively engaging with the policy and working to make positive changes in the school environment. Lastly, having a dedicated committee means there's clear structure for implementing the wellness policy with distinct roles and responsibilities. The clarity aids in a seamless integration of wellness initiatives into everyday school life. The resource linked on this slide, or the QR code, provides evidence-based steps for creating active wellness committees and reiterating their importance in creating healthy school and communities. While not required, it is considered best practice for school wellness teams to meet 4 times per year. That said, I understand that the feasibility of that is sometimes a harsh reality. This regular cadence of 4 times per year, however, could help ensure that the wellness policy and efforts are continually monitored and adjusted if necessary. At a minimum, NDE suggests that wellness teams meet twice per year, once in the fall and once in the spring. And then obviously on the years in which the triennial assessment is due, there may be additional meetings to help work towards completion in a collaborative manner. Councils can be organized either at the district level or within individual school buildings. And building level committees can really be helpful in providing unique insights and shape ideas around their specific school community, while also working to meet those district level goals. Typically, a council or committee will have about 5 to 10 members, and this size allows for that effective collaboration and communication. In some cases, it might consist of a mix of district staff, school staff, community members, family members, and students, and this ensures that all voices are heard. I want to emphasize that school wellness must be a collaborative effort by a team of folks. This includes all or some combination of the individuals listed on this page. School wellness and the various requirements should not be on the shoulders of any one individual. And this was something, kind of a theme that came about as we were working with various school food authorities for the 2023 triennial assessment. Because the triennial assessment is a requirement of participation in the National School Lunch Program, there seem to be some misconceptions out there that the school nutrition director or manager would be the one completing all elements of the triennial assessment. While that individual at your school food authority definitely brings good insights into the nutrition related areas of the wellness policy, certainly insights from other individuals such as school administration, PE educators, other educators, school nurses, definitely should be included because obviously there are other elements within the policy outside of nutrition. From a school staff standpoint, you might consider whether any councils or student groups such as FFA, student council, FCS related groups, whether any initiatives that they're working on might align also with your overall wellness goals. And maybe there's some good collaboration or alignment that can occur by having educators that oversee those groups be a part of the wellness committee. Community members, you may want to reach out to local extension educators, local producers if you are working to integrate farm to school efforts, perhaps dietitians, or other local organizations that support family and community well-being. They might bring some great ideas and insights into wellness efforts that can be implemented across your school or district. And then lastly, parent-teacher organizations. Oftentimes they are working on various fundraiser events, and there could be opportunity to align that once again with your wellness efforts. So maybe one of their fundraisers is a fun run or a glow dance or an obstacle course. Again, great individuals to try to include on your overall wellness committee. And while I know this would be somewhat difficult for some of our RCCIs, I want to again reiterate the engagement of family and community members being a really helpful and beneficial thing for a wellness team. We know that students and parents and community members bring a lot of great perspectives and ideas, and we want to really leverage that and help them shape what wellness efforts are occurring across your SFA. We encourage you to create opportunities for them to contribute in a meaningful way, invite their input in decision-making processes, and also enlist their help with leading various wellness-related activities that promote health. Again, lots of different opportunities here, and I know sometimes this is what we hear being one of the challenging components, is that it's difficult to recruit those family members or community members, but I encourage you to keep trying because again, if the right person finds you, it could be a really good opportunity both ways. Once again, I know this might not be appropriate for all SFAs that are joining our training today, but did want to mention that districts that have multiple school buildings, they may have a couple different levels to their overall wellness committee or council. So there might be a district level council as well as a school level committee or building level committee. And this chart outlines how those two would work together and what responsibilities lie within each area. So as we see at the top, you may want to start by, or you may need to start by revising or reorganizing your district wellness council. And then that district wellness council would evaluate the local wellness policy to ensure that it is comprehensive and to help measure the strength overall of the language. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but that is essentially step one of the triennial assessment. If necessary, the District Wellness Council would then make recommendations to revise the local wellness policy and ask the board to review and approve. From there, the District Wellness Council would communicate the local wellness policy and goals, as well as suggest potential activities to help support the goals to school wellness committees. Those school wellness committees would then implement activities to meet those wellness goals and report successes as well as challenges and overall extent of compliance back to the District Wellness Council. And then you see it kind of loops back up. From there, again, the District Wellness Council might want to reevaluate what's working, what's not working, do any changes need to be made. And then at the very end, typically this would be more from a district standpoint in this instance, but making sure that the results of the local wellness policy assessment or evaluation are publicly shared on either each school's website or the overall district wellness website. Okay, I know that was a lot, but I wanted to provide some context so that when we dive into the triennial assessment components, you have that background information. So now let's talk a little bit more about the triennial assessment process. And obviously, this is crucial for maintaining and enhancing the overall local wellness policy. According to the USDA's final rule, every local education agency, or I'm going to insert SFA here, must perform a comprehensive review of their local wellness policy at least once every 3 years. To access a summary of the final rule, you may scan the QR code or visit the link, and I see Kathleen is helping to put those in the chat for us. Overall, the triennial assessment involves 4 key steps, and those are shown on this slide. We will dive into each step individually throughout the remainder of this training. Step 1 of the triennial assessment involves comparing and rating your SFA's local wellness policy to a model policy assessment tool. This helps ensure that the local wellness policy includes all required language while also helping SFAs understand areas of strength and opportunities for improvement. SFAs can utilize either the NDE version of the Healthier Generation 10-step checklist or the WellSat. You do not need to compare your policy to both assessment tools. The 10-step checklist is included in the Step 1 template on pages 2 through 5. This now allows SFAs to complete both the assessment and the required documentation in one convenient location. For those of you that maybe were a part of completing the 2023 triennial assessment for your SFA, you might remember that the 10-step checklist was previously housed in our Qualtrics survey platform. Once again, to streamline things, we thought it would be easier to embed that 10-step checklist directly in that step 1 form. The 10-step checklist asks you to identify if you have language for each of the 10 required policy elements that we reviewed earlier in this training. The WellSat tool takes a more comprehensive approach and includes best practice areas in addition to the required policy elements. Unfortunately, NDE no longer has the same capacity that we had in 2023 to complete WellSat reviews on behalf of SFAs. Therefore, SFAs will need to complete the WellSat on their own if they select this as their model policy assessment tool. The WellSat assessment typically takes anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to complete, depending on the reviewer's familiarity with the wellness policy. That said, if your SFA previously utilized the WellSat, the previous scorecard could help serve as a reference or a good starting point for you. That said, we don't want you to just take the same ratings for each area from that previous scorecard. We really do want you to go through the current policy because there's maybe a chance that the policy has been updated since that last assessment. Once the model policy comparison assessment has been completed, SFAs are then asked to complete the Step 1 results comparison form to summarize your findings and outline any changes or updates that may be needed to your policy. We'll take a closer look at the Step 1 template in a few more slides. Regardless of the model policy comparison assessment tool that you select, each will ask you to rate the strength of your policy's language for these areas: nutrition education, standards for the USDA child nutrition programs, nutrition standards for competitive foods and beverages, physical education or activity, wellness promotion and marketing, making sure that all your efforts align with those smart snack standards, and then implementation, evaluation, and communication. The NDE version of the Healthier Generation 10-step checklist once again can be found on pages 2 through 5 of that Step 1 template. Both the 10-step checklist and the WellSat use the following rating scale. If the policy contains all required language and ample detail for the required policy area, that area would receive a rating of 2. If the policy contains some of the required language, but is perhaps vague or additional details would be helpful, that area should receive a rating of 1. The SFA should consider revising this area of the policy to strengthen that language. A rating of 1 may also be applicable if the policy contains required language, but perhaps is outdated or no longer aligns with current practices. If the policy contains none of the required language, that area would receive a rating of 0. The SFA must revise that area of the local wellness policy to add required language. Okay, since we're about halfway through, I wanted to give you all an opportunity to kind of interact and understand this rating scale a little bit better. So on this slide, you will see one of the statements from the 10-step checklist, which is in bold, and that reads, "The policy includes language describing the methods for informing the public, including parents, students, and others in the community about the local wellness policy and updates this information on an annual basis." The statement below that is not bolded is sample language that we took from a local wellness policy. And this reads, "The district will inform families and the public about the wellness policy annually, including its content, updates, and implementation status through the district website. Information about the school nutrition environment, including a summary of wellness-related activities, will also be shared. Each year, the district will publish the contact information for the officials leading the wellness committee and provide details on how the public can participate." So here's what I want from you. In the chat box, please tell us if you think that this should be rated as a 1 or a 2. And I just gave away my little spoiler alert here. It's not 0 because obviously there's language included. So type 1 if you think it includes just some of the required language, or 2 if you think all required language is included. And of course, you all are rock stars. I think I see just maybe a couple ones, and that's okay. It might vary depending. Maybe you would think that there needs to be a little bit more clarity in a certain area, but in looking at several wellness policies, I would rate this as a 2, because it gives specific details about how and where the information can be accessed. It provides some details, at least some details, more than I've seen in other policies, about what would be included in the update. And then it also gives some information, again, about how contact information would be released on an annual basis. So once again, a 0 would be would be the appropriate rating if the policy contains none of this language. For this particular policy area, a 1, some sample language that would maybe yield a rating of a 1, would be the district will ensure school and community awareness of this policy by making it available by request. So it's not as easily accessible because they have to make the request and then wait for the request to be approved and then get the information. It's not just available at their fingertips to find on the district website. So thanks for participating in that little activity. Hopefully that helps you understand kind of how to go through that rating scale process. And on the next slide, I'll share a resource that might also be helpful in determining ratings for each area. As I previously mentioned, NDE does not have the capacity to complete WellSat reviews on behalf of SFAs for the 2026 Triennial Assessment. Should you choose to utilize the WellSat, you may find that you can copy your assessment from the last Triennial Assessment if the WellSat 3.0 was utilized. And this would allow you to pull in the previous ratings, and then again, you could go through the current wellness policy to make sure that you either agree with the rating scales that were pulled in or revise those ratings if applicable. Again, the WellSat uses that same rating scale, so you see that on this slide. So there's some nice consistency on that between the WellSat and the 10-step checklist. For your convenience, we've provided a link or QR code to the WellSat instruction page, and this kind of provides you with instructions for how to even get started creating that assessment. I will say you will need to create a free account or register for a free account in order to be able to complete the WellSat online assessment. In addition, we've also provided a link or QR code to the WellSat questions in case it would be helpful to review this before starting the online assessment. This resource could also be utilized by SFAs opting to complete the 10-step checklist, as it provides sample language that would receive a rating of 0, 1, or 2 for each policy area. This can also be used to help identify instances where maybe language could be strengthened between a 1 or a 2, and or provide a starting point if required language is missing from the wellness policy altogether. After comparing the SFA's local wellness policy to a model policy tool, you will then complete page 1 of the step 1 checklist, and you can see a screenshot of that on the slide. Essentially, this is the same information that we were asking you to complete if you were part of the 2023 Triennial Assessment process. But on this form, you will list areas of strength within the wellness policy, as well as opportunities for improvement. You will also identify whether new language was or will be adopted into the wellness policy as a result of the comparison. And if so, you would indicate which changes are going to be made or have been made in the notes section of question 3. And then you would indicate whether the changes have been approved by the board. Finally, you will describe your next steps for strengthening your local wellness policy and or wellness efforts. And I do want to mention that the forms for each triennial assessment step are currently Google Docs, and they are set to force a copy. So that means when you go to these links, you will click the link, the original link, and you will see a screen that says make a copy, or it has a button that says make a copy. You will then click that button, and this allows SFAs to directly edit the template. You will want to ensure that you save or move that file to a shared Google folder so that you can easily find it and provide access to other individuals on your wellness team. And I say to a shared Google folder, but again, another internal file sharing method, OneDrive, something like that as well would also work. Earlier today, I was notified by a school district that they do not have access to utilize Google. And so they were having a hard time even accessing the templates themselves. And so for that reason, we are working to create Word doc versions that would still allow you to edit the files directly. And we'll be working to get those posted to our website as soon as possible. And then I want to just take a brief moment to share an example of a completed step 1 form. Hopefully this kind of helps put all the pieces together. So bear with me while I flip screens here. And Kathleen, thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, thank you. So I know this is a little bit small. Hopefully you can see it okay. But once again, on that step 1 template, you would first indicate which of those 2 assessment tools you utilized. In this case, it was that 10-step checklist. So as we scroll through, we would see the ratings on pages 2 through 5 for that. You can see that this mock-up has identified some strengths in the wellness policy, opportunities for improvement. It's indicated that yes, as a result of the comparison, new language will be adopted. And it then went on to describe what will be adopted. It indicated whether the changes have been approved by the school board. And then it describes next steps for strengthening the local wellness policy. One thing that I do want to mention, and this is a question that's come up via email, is that if you identify that your policy needs to be updated, and perhaps the board will not be reviewing the policy until July, that is okay. You can complete the remainder of the triennial assessment documentation. Obviously, we know that you are working to make those changes. In that instance, it could be helpful for you to just kind of give us an indicator or a date in which you estimate that the updated or revised policy will be made available. So you can plug that in behind your response on question 4, if that's applicable. As you scroll down, then you see some information or instructions on how to complete that 10-step checklist. Essentially, it just asks for the school or district name, the agency or agreement number, and then the school wellness policy contact name and email address. And then they would go through and indicate their rating for each of the 10 questions or statements shown. Now you can see that there's several ones or zeros. So if I were to look at this model policy comparison assessment before I looked at the step 1 documentation template, that would be a good clue into me. Okay, there should be some changes noted on step 3, and they should be working to revise the policy. Okay, now let's go back to our slide deck here. All right. To recap, here are the components that will be completed in step 1. We will review guidance for uploading completed documentation into CNP in a few more slides, but as you can see from the checklist, you will need to upload the local wellness policy, completed model policy comparison assessment, and that completed step 1 form. So if you're doing the 10-step checklist, again, it kind of combines the comparison assessment and step 1 form together. If you're doing the WellStat, you would need to upload the WellStat scorecard there. Moving on to step 2, that asks SFAs to assess and document progress made in reaching the 3 required goal areas, which should be included already in the local wellness policy. In addition, SFAs will also indicate the level of compliance with the local wellness policy across all grade levels and/or buildings. And this is a really critical step for ensuring that your SFA's practices align with the language outlined in the local wellness policy, or in other words, that your policy is moving from paper to practice. The revised Step 2 form combines Steps 2 and 3 from the 2023 assessment, as it was noted that there was some redundancy between those 2 forms. So we combined those to hopefully help with clarity. And we've also embedded instructions into the form. So I know it looks a little overwhelming as you're looking at this screenshot, but I promise you a lot of that information is just kind of placeholder instructions to help with clarity as you're working through each of these forms. First, on pages 2 through 3, you will indicate whether each goal was met and provide a summary of what was achieved across each grade group within your school, district, or RCCI. Once again, we'd ask that you please carefully read the instructions that are included within the form to help guide your completion. You will notice that the form provides space to document a 4th goal if an additional goal was included in the local wellness policy. However, this is completely optional, and you're only required to document progress for the 3 required goal areas, which include nutrition education or promotion, physical activity, and then another school wellness goal of each SFA's choosing. Beginning then on page 4 of step 2, you will identify the extent of compliance with the wellness policy for the other non-goal policy areas. Please pay close attention to the directions provided at the top, as it outlines a little bit of differences for districts with multiple school buildings, as well as instructions specific to single schools, districts, or RCCIs. And once again, I'm going to navigate away from our slide deck to our mock-up and give you a little bit of a glimpse of how you might complete this form. So on page 1 of step 2, you can see that it outlines the overall requirements of the wellness policy and provides a couple instructions on completing that first section. In the mock-up, you notice that in this space, the school had included their nutrition education goal, and you would do that for physical activity and the other student wellness goal. And that's the goal that is in the current wellness policy. So you want to just copy that language into this space. Then you would move through on section A for each goal area and indicate if the goal was met by either checking the box or highlighting the correct or most applicable response. In this case, the response was yes. So then they moved on and provided a summary of what was achieved across each grade group within the SFA. And that is just because we realized that nutrition education and/or promotional efforts might look very different from an elementary perspective to a high school perspective. So just give us a summary of what was done to meet that goal for each of those grade levels if you serve each of those grade levels. Same thing, you would do the same thing for physical activity as well as that other student wellness goal. And in this case, the sample policy indicated a 4th goal. And it's kind of nice. You would want to highlight those efforts if you had that included. So that's why we gave space for that optional additional goal area. Then you would scroll down and for districts with multiple school buildings, we understand that you might have an alternative method for collecting this information. So we are willing to accept a different data set. If you maybe use like a Google form or you have an Excel spreadsheet, you can link a copy of that in lieu of completing this section. However, for single school districts and or others that maybe don't have that alternative method of data collection, you would want to complete these other areas. And simply, it's for federal state meal standards. You would indicate the level of compliance by checking or highlighting not compliant or partially compliant or compliant. If you indicate not compliant or partially compliant, you would then want to use the notes section to indicate how you will be working to bring all schools within the district into compliance with that requirement area. Same thing for question 2 and question 3. And then on question 4, you would indicate how you involved the public in the process. There's also an optional space for additional notes or discussion. If a district wants to link in an alternative data collection method, they can use that space to include that link. Alternatively, you could just upload a secondary attachment if that's easier. Okay, we're going to go back to our slide deck. Hopefully I'm not making you all dizzy here, but just want to be able to share those examples. Hopefully that helps aid completion. So to recap, here are the components to be completed in step 2. If your district intends to provide that alternative file for the extent of compliance section, please ensure that file is either linked within the discussion or notes page, or once again, include it as a separate attachment. For step 3, SFAs will complete one of 2 provided public reporting templates to meet the public reporting requirement. SFAs will then share this completed template with the public on a public-facing web page to ensure that the public and school community are aware of not only the local wellness policy, but of wellness efforts and achievements. This is a great opportunity to highlight all of the wellness-related efforts completed by your school food authority, and as well as an opportunity to serve as an opportunity to potentially recruit new wellness committee members. SFAs only need to complete one of the public reporting templates pictured on this slide, and each template should summarize key elements from the triennial assessment, including policy compliance results, policy goals, and progress made towards those goals, as well as steps taken to meet any unmet goals, if applicable, and any next steps. As you can see from the slide, one of the templates is more of a summary, bulleted. You can include pictures to highlight different wellness efforts. So that's an option, or you can do a more narrative summary using the letter-based template. Alternative public reports are also acceptable, so long as they include the same elements reflected in these templates. In some cases, I know last triennial assessment, we had some districts or schools that opted to kind of create their own public reporting template, but again, it just must contain the same information that we're seeking on these templates. The public report should then be posted to the SFA's wellness webpage or school nutrition webpage along with the local wellness policy. So here again, I'm going to share an example of what this might look like. So the first page, again, it provides a couple instructions, and then you have your choice of the more summary version public report or the letter-based report. Shout out to Plattsmouth Public Schools, or community schools. Their photo is highlighted just as a placeholder for photos. They participated in National School Lunch Week program, and we thought it was a nice picture and provided a little bit of insight on how you could utilize this template to highlight various wellness efforts. So then you would go through, you would add your logo at the top, your name at the top, or your district or school name or RCCI name. You can include the members of your wellness team, summarize your policy compliance results, your wellness policy goals, key achievements, and next steps. You'll also notice that they've conveniently added the wellness webpage to help revert people back to that page. The letter template is very similar. Again, it's just more of a narrative template. And so step 1, you would summarize the results of the assessment. Step 2, you would indicate the progress made towards meeting those goals. And then you would indicate how you are working to bring any schools into compliance for any unmet areas and identify next steps. Okay, back to our slide deck here. So here's a similar public report example or exemplar from 2023. Once again, shout out to Hampton Public Schools if anybody is on. It does a great job of outlining areas of strength or opportunities for improvement, wellness goals, and next steps. And I want to mention there's lots of great examples out there from 2023. We just pulled a couple here to highlight throughout the training. To recap, here are the components to be completed in step 3. You'll complete that public report and upload that to a public-facing webpage as well as into CNP, and ensure that the local wellness policy is also easily accessible on the school or district or RCCI website. As a best practice, SFAs might consider having a dedicated wellness webpage. At a minimum, the public report of the triennial assessment and the local wellness policy need to be public facing. So I know for some non-publics, sometimes this information is located behind a password protected portion of the website, but you will need to make sure that it's on a public facing portion of the website and easily accessible. Ideally, you should be able to type the word wellness or triennial assessments into the search function of the web page and be able to locate this information. If you desire to have a wellness specific web page, you might also consider sharing other wellness related information. That could include wellness committee meeting dates, updates, contact information, links to resources, as well as a space to have community members, parents, or students provide feedback or comment. Once again, I know there's many great examples of this out there, but Grand Island Public Schools has a great webpage dedicated to their wellness efforts. And you'll notice that at the top left-hand corner here, they have prominently linked their wellness policy as well as their 2023 triennial assessment results. They also use this page to share additional wellness-related content or healthy snack ideas. So this could be utilized as a way to help meet wellness goals and or just kind of tie all of this information together so that those that may be visiting this website have a better understanding of what the school is working towards. All right, lastly, in step 4, SFAs will notify NDE of the method selected to meet the public notification requirement, as well as share a direct link to where the triennial assessment results and local wellness policy are located on the SFA's website or school district's website. Once again, the minimum requirement is to post the current policy and triennial assessment results on a public-facing portion of the website. I know I've said that multiple times, really trying to drive that point home. You'll notice on this template that the audience number 1 section is required, and some of the components, such as the audience and the first bullet point, have been pre-filled for your convenience. You can certainly adjust these if you would like, but this should be the space where you indicate where we can access that information. And it's most helpful if you can provide a direct link to that web page rather than just like the home page of your overall website. SFAs may also wish to notify certain populations of the availability of this information using other notification methods, perhaps through a school newsletter or through presentations. And if you choose to do so, we would ask that you also include that information or those notification methods on this step 4 form. Please also indicate the date in which the notification occurred. And for time's sake, I think, again, we can see a nice visual snip of this on the current slide, so I'm not going to navigate to the mock-up. But rather, let's recap. So here are the components that you need to complete in step 4. It's pretty straightforward. This is really more of about communication between the school food authority and NDE and providing that direct link to the web page where that triennial assessment and wellness policy information is going to be housed. Make sure to also upload this completed step 4 documentation into CNP. And then when all documentation is completed and uploaded into CNP, we would ask that you notify NDE of completion by emailing Laurel at laurelwheelernde@gmail.com. This will allow us to go through and track as school food authorities complete this process. And that way we don't have to go in and kind of seek that out. So it would be very, very helpful if you make sure to complete that notification piece via email as well. As mentioned or alluded to earlier within the presentation, there is a new process for submitting triennial assessment documentation. Previously, documentation was uploaded to an NDE-owned Google Drive in the SFA's respective folder. However, due to an internal procedure change, that is no longer allowed. Therefore, all SFAs will upload the 2026 triennial assessment documentation into CNP. As shown on this slide, documentation is to be added to the attachment list in school year 2025-2026 school nutrition programs application packet. This must be completed by June 30th, 2026. Once again, please don't forget to notify us once this has been completed by emailing Laurel at laurelwheelernde@gmail.com. SFAs can access a step-by-step instruction guide for uploading triennial assessment documentation into CNP. Since CNP requires login credentials, only specific individuals at your school food authority likely have access. That might include the authorized representative, the school nutrition director or manager, and/or claim contact. Therefore, these individuals will likely be the ones responsible for uploading the triennial assessment documentation. And please know you can upload all documentation at once everything has been completed. You don't need to do that on a step-by-step basis. We only included that in each checklist so you know what documentation would need to be uploaded for that portion. The upload instruction guide can also be accessed on our NDE local wellness policy webpage. I kind of went over that first bullet point, so I'm going to bypass that and just state that SFAs are strongly encouraged to identify an internal system for retaining those wellness policy and triennial assessment documentation pieces. This can be especially useful as you're working to complete the 2026 documentation forms. That way, multiple members of your team have access and can help edit those documentation pieces. An example of this would be Google Drive or Google Folder or OneDrive. Once again, we would encourage that there be multiple staff members that have access rights to that. And that is particularly important in the event that staff turnover occurs. We don't want any one person to be the only individual that has access to that information. Please access and download all 2023 Triennial Assessment documentation from the previous Triennial Assessment Google folder that is owned by NDE. We would ask that you do that by September 30th, 2026, and we will be providing periodic reminders ahead of this deadline. In order to do that, you can visit the link or the QR code provided on the slide. And again, Kathleen entered that into the chat. Locate your School Food Authorities folder, which is sorted in alphabetical order. Right-click and then select Download. Make sure to then save that folder and all documentation and share it with others that may need access to it. The link to the 2023 Triennial Assessment Google folder may also be accessed on our NDE Local Wellness Policy webpage under the Triennial Assessment Documentation, Templates, and Resources tab. NDE has also developed 3 sample wellness team agendas that highlight the triennial assessment steps. These can be utilized to help aid collaboration and completion of the triennial assessment, as well as identify and plan additional wellness initiatives and/or activities. These agendas can once again be accessed on our local wellness policy webpage on the NDE website under Sample Wellness Committee meeting agendas. And once again, we will be creating Word document formats of these agendas for those that cannot access Google. Okay, as we wrap up, we just wanted to share the several resources that can help aid completion of the triennial assessment, as well as understanding of the overall local wellness policy requirement and support wellness efforts at your school, district, or RCCI. You can access these links through the PDF version of the slide deck that was provided in the training reminder that was sent out this morning, or on our NDE Local Wellness Policy webpage. Some additional resources, these are more aligned to help support overall school wellness efforts, so you may find those helpful. And then to further support completion of the 2026 triennial assessment, we wanted to mention that NDE will be hosting virtual drop-in office hour sessions. And 2 sessions are currently planned, one for Thursday, February 12th, and one for Thursday, March 26th, both of which will be held from 2 to 3 p.m. via Zoom. And we will provide links 1 week prior to each of those sessions using that same listserv that we utilized for today's training notification. Depending on demand, additional dates may be added, but also if you have questions or need support and you're not able to attend those, or you just don't want to wait for those, you can certainly feel free to reach out to myself and/or to Laurel Wheeler. Both of our email addresses are at the bottom of the screen on this slide. And I just want to really thank you all for attending today's training. I know this is a lot of information, but we really greatly appreciate your efforts to complete this assessment by June 30th, 2026. And we also really want to acknowledge your efforts in helping your students and school communities lead healthier, active lives through school wellness efforts. We will now work to answer any questions that have been submitted in the chat box. And if we are not able to get to all of them in our remaining time, like I said earlier, we will develop a frequently asked question document to share that out along with the training recording. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Laurel and Kathleen. Let me know what questions we might have.
Sure. We only had one question in the chat today, and that was, how do we do this when our entire population is of pre-K to 8 is 27 and the entire staff is 6? And they're referring to building a robust wellness committee with a smaller school staff population.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be some variances in the makeup of those school wellness committees. That is where, again, maybe parent and community member support would be really, really beneficial. Obviously, you need to have at least one member of your school team kind of leading those efforts. But I understand that that is a little bit more difficult to accomplish when you have such a small team and you obviously wear multiple hats and do other things. This is, however, a requirement of participation in the National School Lunch Program. And so even if it is that you end up meeting once a year, just to be able to kind of talk through, okay, what is our plan for the full year? If that helps with, the capacity issues and things like that, that is better than, not having anything in place at all. If you have additional questions and want to talk through that, you can feel free to reach out to me and we can definitely brainstorm that a little bit further.
And we do have the next question from Jolie. So did we get access to this slide?
Yes, I did send, so anybody that was registered for this training as of probably 7:45 this morning would have received an email training reminder, and the slide deck was linked in that email. But the slide deck is also available on our local wellness policy webpage, on the NDE local wellness policy webpage. And I believe, Kathleen, you have added that to the chat. Maybe you'll be able to add that link once again to the chat box.
And then I see that we have some questions from emails. Would you like to go over those too as well, Warren?
I think we can go over some of those. Let me go to, there's a couple that I think might be better responded to in the FAQ document, because I do think that we'll end up doing a couple screen grabs just to help facilitate understanding of what we're talking about. But I believe one of the first questions was for someone that was working to complete the WellSat. And we got this question in 2023 as well. But the question is around whether they need to include language about the privacy of students with free and reduced eligibility. And if it's not included in the wellness policy, but it's rather included in a different policy, does that work? Or does there specifically have to be this language included in the wellness policy? And the answer to this is no, that language does not need to be in the wellness policy. We had tried to provide feedback to the Yukon Red Center, who does the oversight of the WellSat, and mentioned, yes, we understand this is a requirement for participation in the National School Lunch Program. However, it's not listed as a requirement for USDA, from the USDA, for the wellness policy itself. So just know that we understand that one, even if you rank it as a 2, even if it's not in the wellness policy, but obviously you've communicated how you keep that information confidential or private in another way, we would accept that response. And then we have gotten several questions from folks stating, they just received, or excuse me, they just completed the 2023 triennial assessment, albeit a little bit late. Maybe they completed it in 2024. The same 3-year cycle still applies because it's based on that original June 2023 deadline. So all school food authorities, everyone that is participating or operating the National School Lunch Program, is required to complete another assessment by June 30th, 2026. And then I think I mentioned this one live a little bit ago, but the question was, do revisions to the local wellness policy need to be approved by the board prior to June 30th, 2026? And the answer to that is no. I understand that a lot of schools and their school boards or district school boards do review policies in their July meetings. That's a standard that we've been told by multiple folks. And so it doesn't need to be approved by the triennial assessment deadline. You should still be able to complete all triennial assessment documentation. And we would just ask that you upload your current wellness policy. And then whenever the updated or revised policy has been approved, you would obviously want to work to make sure that that replaces the existing policy on your web page, and then you could also upload it into the attachment list in CNP. I have received a couple of questions about accessing CNP. Once again, only a few individuals likely have access to CNP, or they have login credentials for CNP. So those would be the individuals who would likely be responsible for uploading the triennial assessment documentation. Typically, there's an authorized representative, a food service director or manager, and or a claim contact that would have access to the CNP system. And then I answered the question about utilizing Google, that we will be working to provide the documentation templates in a Word format. Trying to see if we have, Laurel or Kathleen, any additional questions that have come through in the chat.
No
I
more
know
in
we're
the
getting,
chat. Sorry.
no, you're fine. I know we're getting close on time, so I understand if folks need to start hopping off. We will stick around and answer any remaining questions, and or like I said, we'll make sure that we provide an FAQ doc that reviews all of these questions that we've received today. But thank you again for your attendance. If you need to hop off, otherwise, I think I've gotten a couple direct messages that I want to go back to.
Oh, where am I at? Are they kicking us off?
I think we covered that the slide deck is available on her web page, and Kathleen dropped the link to that in the chat. And then I received a question that says, why are you requiring SFAs to enter the 2023 triennial assessment data when NDE already has that information? Seems like the NDE could add this information for the schools. So we're not adding the 2023 triennial assessment information to CNP, but rather we want you to be able to retain that information. And since we're going to be eliminating access to that Google Drive at the end of September in 2026, we want you to be able to pull that information, download it, and save it in an internal way. You could certainly, as you're uploading documents to CNP for the 2026 assessment, you could certainly save those documents in CNP there. But again, we cannot continue to operate that shared NDE Google Drive between us and external sources. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Any other questions that anyone has? If not, thank you again for your time and attendance today. We really appreciate this, and we hope that you found today's session helpful. We will be also providing a certificate. So for those that want to document professional standards hours, we will be adding that to the webpage as well. All right, last chance. Any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and end today's session. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your week.